and welcome to Book Your Give Here. We're Travel That Gives. I'm Lulu Lima, your chief travel guru. I hope this episode of Dream Now Travel Later inspires you to travel, and I invite you to give us the opportunity to help plan your next memorable trip. So grab your popcorn and enjoy.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Travel Tuesday. I'm super excited here today because I have Chad with me, and we are going to talk about the forbidden country for the U.S., Cuba. Now, most of you all know that my family is from Cuba. So I have been obviously born and raised in the U.S., but all of my roots are from there. So I'm so excited that I'm going to be able to talk about my parents' country and really kind of give you guys a little bit of a flavor. So with that, I'm not going to take up too much time, and I'm going to let Chad go through the rest. Thank you so much, Chad. The floor is yours.
All right. Thank you. Let me just jump right into it. So I'm the founder of Cuba Candela, and I'll tell you a little bit about my background and how I got into this business. I started my career working in finance, and I always loved to travel. And so I went on this long backpacking trip through Southeast Asia, and I then ended up living in Havana, Cuba for a summer in 2015, which was really in the height of all the changes under the Obama administration. I just absolutely was totally inspired by the country in so many different respects, and decided to start a DMC, destination management company that supports local entrepreneurs in Cuba. It's a big part of what we do in providing these wonderful experiences. So that's a little background, and Lulu, you can jump onto the first slide. I'll start by just giving you a quick overview. This is a map of Cuba. Many people are surprised at how big Cuba is. It's actually about the size of the state of Pennsylvania, with a population of 11 million people. If you look at the map, it's about 50% of all the Caribbean landmass. So in other words, it's the size of all the other Caribbean countries combined. And so it's huge. It's absolutely huge. The place where most people want to start is Havana. That's the capital city. That's in the top left part of the map. You can see there. Havana is a 500-year-old city. It's one of the oldest cities in the Western Hemisphere. And it's just stunning. I mean, so many different architectural styles. You think of the old cars, you think of the vibrancy of culture and music coming out of every street corner. I want to go through some pictures to show you what I'm talking about in a few minutes. But that's where a lot of it, of your trip to Cuba starts, is in Havana. And then some of the other provinces that many clients like to travel to, one I would highlight is Vinales. That's off to the western part of the map. You can see that's over in tobacco growing country. It's about 3 hours to the west of Havana. And then to the east, going down to the southern part of the island to Cienfuegos.
And that's where my mom is from. So shout out to my mom.
So Cienfuegos is a very, very interesting city as well. And we stopped there on the way to Trinidad. Yeah. And that really comprises what I would call the circuit. So if you have about 4-5 days, you can cover Havana and a day trip to Vinales. And if you have 7-8 days, or even up to 10 days, then you can include Cienfuegos and Trinidad, which are about 4 to 5 hours drive from Havana, and you would stay overnight in Cienfuegos or Trinidad.
And for those of you guys who are really interested in going into Santiago de Cuba and being on the other side, we really need to make sure that your itinerary is long enough for it, because it can be up to a 15-hour drive.
That's right. Yep. It's as we said, it's a huge island. And if you're familiar with some of what the cruise ships were offering about a year ago, they were including a stop to Santiago de Cuba. So they were circumnavigating the entire island. That is a good way to get there, but there's no real easy way to get to Santiago once you're in Cuba. And so it is a far drive. So if you're thinking of going to some of those outer provinces, typically we would plan a trip like that for a very special request where someone has a really specific reason to cover the whole island. Perhaps they're visiting family members, or perhaps they're visiting their roots. Which could be an interesting way to do it. But for most people, they probably want to stick with Havana, Vinales, and Cienfuegos and Trinidad, and that circuit to the left.
And that's awesome. So there's always that question, can we still go to Cuba? So the answer is yes. And let's talk a little bit about all of those moving pieces with the flights and so forth.
Sure. So starting with the flights, yes, you can still travel to Cuba. It's very, very easy, which often surprises people. It just continues to surprise people how easy it is to travel to Cuba because there's so much misperception with headlines and what the news is saying about Cuba. And so the reality is it's very easy. You can book a flight on any of the major airlines and fly directly into Havana. So that's the first step. You book your flight. The second step is the visa. So the Cuban tourist visa, that remains very easy to obtain. You can buy it directly from one of the airlines at the airport. There are different kiosks that are set up when you check in. You buy the visa, you can pay for it with a credit card. There's nothing you have to do in advance. You can just buy the visa directly at the airport.
Yeah, and a lot of times, like I know Southwest in the past, pre-COVID, was already including the price of the visa in the ticket price. So we can check as we build your itinerary if whether or not it's going to be included. So just to kind of give you guys a little bit on that. So, and it was running about $75 per person, but things can change. So don't hold me to that price point. As you plan your trip, we certainly will organize that. And of course, there's always that great travel category of how are you going, and you're supporting the Cuban people. So there is a social impact behind it, and Book Here, Give Here is all about social responsibility. So this is where you're really experiencing a lot of that.
That's absolutely correct. And just back on the tourist visa, just to make super clear, you don't have to buy it from the airline. That's something that we can take care of for you in advance, send it to you via FedEx. So you don't have to worry about anything the day of your departure. But just to keep in mind, it's very easy. There's nothing you have to do in advance. You don't have to send your passport into the embassy or anything like that. So getting into the travel category, just as a quick reminder, you do have to have a purpose for travel to Cuba. There are 12 categories of travel, and the most popular now, the best category, is called Support for the Cuban People. And as Lulu mentioned, it has a great social impact component, which is that you have to spend your time interacting with the culture of Cuba and specifically supporting private businesses. And these private businesses are Cuban entrepreneurs. So many people are, or some people are surprised to hear that Cuba actually has a very vibrant entrepreneurial economy. They've got over 500,000 people working in the private sector as entrepreneurs. And so with the Support for the Cuban People trip, you're actually directly supporting these entrepreneurs in their businesses, and whether that's staying in a private boutique hotel that's operated by an entrepreneur, owned by a Cuban entrepreneur, or taking a private car that's operated and owned by a Cuban entrepreneur, other private experiences, whether it's a salsa lesson, visiting an art gallery, music performance. There really is just so much that's being offered by this entrepreneurial community in Cuba now, and that is how your travel complies with the Support for the Cuban People license. So the license is something that we take care of on your behalf. There's nothing that you need to do. We take care of all the documentation on your behalf. But what you should know about it is that it does create this great social impact. We take it very seriously. And the average trip with us directly supports over 30 different Cuban entrepreneurs. So you can really feel good about leaving a positive footprint in the country and be sure that you're making that impact and that your money is going directly to the Cuban entrepreneurs.
Yep, and that's awesome. And one of the things that I do recommend because of our government here is that you bring euros instead of dollars. That way you don't have to say that you spent American dollars in Cuba. You spent euros. So that is a verbal way of circumnavigating, so to speak, the whole moving piece of, did you support the military or anything along those lines? We won't organize anything that supports the military. However, by having euros and not American dollars, you actually can go with a clean mind. One of the biggest questions that always comes up as well is the beach resorts. So while we can't do beaches under the US law, we can create beach time. So I would love a little bit of kind of for you to elaborate on some of that, so that way we can tell our followers, and so that way they kind of have a better idea of what that really means.
Sure. So yeah, first, so why can we not do beach resorts to begin with? So it goes back to the travel category of support for the Cuban people, which requires that all clients have a full-time schedule of cultural experiences. So you're actually required to interact with the people of Cuba and to have meaningful interactions with the people of Cuba. It's one of the most wonderful things about visiting Cuba, because the Cuban people are so hospitable, they're so welcoming, and they're so interesting. There's so many different conversations, cultural exchanges that you can have interacting with the people. It's a wonderful thing about visiting Cuba. But it's hard to have those interactions if you're just sitting at a beach resort, right? Sipping on a mojito, soaking in the sun. That really is not interacting with the local people. And so that's one reason why the beach resorts are not compliant with the travel category of support for the Cuban people. It's just not possible to have those cultural interactions that are required when you're just sitting at a beach resort. So that's one thing. The second thing is the beach resorts in Cuba are not the best quality at this time. If you're looking for a beach resort, go somewhere else. You can go to any other island in the Caribbean. Save the beach resort in Cuba for another time in the future, perhaps when the rules change. But for now, what we can do is we can set up a trip to the beach during your free time. And it is possible to have free time on this full-time schedule. And so we can have it be a trip to the beach for an afternoon. We can have cultural aspect to it where you're going with a local guide who's showing you some of the cultural aspects of the beach and the local people that are there and the local vendors. And there's a way to support Cuban entrepreneurs during your trip to the beach. You can buy food or drinks from some of the local vendors or other services. So we have a way of doing it that's legally compliant with the support for the Cuban people framework. But the thing to know as a client is that the beach time will be limited. It's not a beach trip. You can't go and just spend all of your time at a resort. You're mostly going to be spending your time interacting with Cubans and having these cultural experiences. And we can include a couple of hours visiting the beach on one of your days so that you can see it and make it legally compliant. But again, this trip is about culture. It's about interacting with the local people. It's not about just going and sitting at a beach resort.
Yeah. And so thank you for that. So, and we talked about a lot of some of these moving pieces, obviously the authenticity and the social impact of it. And especially since the cruises are gone and there's really no big crowds, right? So this is a great opportunity. You're going to have so many things, and there are, some properties here where, especially the Wi-Fi, you'll actually have some level of service for that. So as time passes on, you're going to have more communication options. WhatsApp is certainly a great way for all of us to communicate, as is Facebook Messenger. So do you have any other inputs on the Wi-Fi?
Yeah, the Wi-Fi has improved significantly. And that is always a question that comes up. Historically, Wi-Fi in Cuba was very slow and unreliable. It's gotten reliable. I'm proud to say that.
That's
I was
awesome.
I was actually at a major hotel in the Bahamas about 6 months ago, and the hotel and the Wi-Fi there was much worse than it was in Cuba. So on a relative basis, I mean, even in the United States, we go to some hotels and the Wi-Fi doesn't work in your room and you have to go to the business center, and how frustrating that can be.
Yes.
So on a relative basis, the Wi-Fi in Cuba has gotten much, much better, certainly to the point where if you have to check emails, you can rely on it to check emails multiple times throughout the day. The one caveat is it may not be fast enough to be streaming movies, right? You're not going to go to Cuba and watch your favorite Netflix series in your hotel room. You're not going to be able to download huge files, but email is totally fine. WhatsApp is a great way to communicate. Facebook Messenger is a great way to communicate. Another one that I like is just simply using text messages. So your mobile phone will roam in Cuba naturally. You don't have to do anything. All the major US telecom providers have roaming capabilities in Cuba. The only thing to remember is that they can be expensive.
Yeah.
So the most expensive part of the roaming is data roaming, which is when you just pull up your phone, you start surfing the internet in a foreign country and perhaps downloading all this data on your apps without realizing it. That can run up a huge bill in Cuba. It's about $2 a megabyte for data roaming. So for a megabyte is not very much. So you could easily go into 1,000 or 2,000 megabytes by accident. So what we say is always keep your data roaming off.
Yes.
However, text roaming is a great tip. It's a hack, actually. Most people don't know this. You can text while you're in Cuba.
Learning.
This is a great way to communicate. You can actually text while you're in Cuba. So you turn off data roaming, you keep your phone on, otherwise completely normally, and you can send text messages for 50 cents per message. So if you need to check in with someone back in the States, send a couple messages, a few dollars here or there. It's a great way just to know, hey, you're still connected back to your family. If you need to text, that's a great way to do it. You can also call, and calling is about $3 a minute. So that gives other people comfort. Hey, pick up the phone, couple minute call to check in. That's $5-6. In the context of my whole trip, gives me a lot of peace of mind. So those are 2 tips for communications. And Lulu, I'll turn it back over to you if you want me to touch on any of the other things there, or if we can move on.
No, we're good. So we really want to kind of focus on, why, what to do, when to do it, and really, who's going to really enjoy this. So I think that for the most part, we talked about, obviously we start off in Havana and then we visit, depending, how much time you have, 1 to 2 provinces. Where we can easily go to Viñales or Cienfuegos or Trinidad, and if you really want to experience a little bit further, I think that at that point, we're going to focus on making sure that you guys have a really longer length of stay so that you can enjoy the rest of the country. It is Caribbean weather, so obviously May through October, you're going to have the most heat, but so November and April are the most popular, but you can go all year round. You have to be cognizant, obviously, of the hurricanes. Cuba is in the hurricane belt, and they will experience quite a number of them. But a tropical shower, it's great. It'll rain for a few minutes and then it stops and it's beautiful the rest of the day.
Mm-hmm. And you can get insurance for hurricanes, so that's nothing to deter you from planning. You can buy insurance. Yes. It's covered in standard trip cancellation interruption insurance. It's very affordable, and it's 100% covered. So if the time for you to travel is August, if you want to go with your kids, summer break, then just know that you can protect yourself 100% for the flight and the whole package on the ground just by buying that insurance.
Yep, absolutely. And so that's something that I offer you as part of the package when I'm creating it. So just kind of keep that in mind. So we talked about some hotels earlier. And there's also not just hotels, but there's also private villas and things like that. So here we're going to kind of show you some pictures of the quality of what you're going to see and experience. And I think that's important too, because some people are expecting, oh my God, this rundown, building or things like that, because there are places within Havana and the country itself that might be run down. But the parts that we're going to take care of, we're really going to make sure that you guys are experiencing what you're used to here in America, at least for the most part.
And what I wanted to highlight here was one of my favorite it's actually a luxury boutique hotel in Cuba. Not many people are aware that this even exists. It's called Paseo 206, and it's an old mansion that was built in the 1930s that has now been beautifully restored and is operated as a boutique hotel. They've got a full restaurant on site, they have reception, they have Wi-Fi, all the amenities, 10 rooms, each room is different. It's the only SLH property in Cuba, which is the Small Luxury Hotels Accreditation.
And that's awesome to know.
Just wanted to kind of point out that this does exist now, and it's only been around for a few years. But for those that are really looking for a luxury experience, and especially in their accommodation, it does exist, and we can handle all the arrangements for you. And then on the villas, this is another really unique product and a really interesting way to experience Cuba, especially if you're a family, multi-generational family. If there's more folks traveling together, you want to have time to hang out and bond with one another, having the villa as a venue to cook, have a cooking class. We can have different experiences that come to you, or just have extra time to be with one another. And this is one of the nicer villas that we work with. It's a 7-bedroom, 7-bathroom villa. It's got a swimming pool. So that's another option for people that want that privacy or just want to have the ability to set up experiences on site.
And also, paradores are also an option if we want them, right?
Yes. So those are the restaurants where we have our clients eat at. The paladares are privately owned. They're operated by Cuban entrepreneurs, and that is where you'll get the best meal, the best culinary experience in Cuba is with the paladares.
Yeah, and some of them will have some sleeping arrangements as well, but some of them don't. So just keep that in mind. If you also are doing any internet searches or things like that, you might hear some of that. So let's make sure that whatever you guys research, we have that conversation, because I want to make sure that as I'm helping you plan that itinerary, I'm giving you exactly what you're looking for.
And so the Casa Particulares are the home rentals, Lulu, that you're referring to. So those are some of the other options. We've got the luxury range, we've got Paseo 206, we've got the private villas, we've got our whole collection on the luxury side. And then we also have a collection of 4-star private villas and private homes, which can also be called Casa Particulares, which are rental homes that are rented like B&Bs. But the ones that we work with are really the top standard of B&Bs. So that's a really unique way to see the country, is staying in one of those private homes.
Yeah.
And you're really making that positive impact because you're supporting the Cuban entrepreneur that owns it and the staff that works there.
Yeah, and that's
just moving on to the experiences here. So I love this picture. I still remember the day that we took this. This is part of Old Havana. It's this beautiful street. You can see the architecture, you can see the colors. You go there at sunset, it's golden hour. And this is just part of the bucket list item. Old Havana, you have to see this in your life. This is just one of the most interesting places to visit. It's 500 years old. All these different architectural styles. They've got almost every style of architecture covered over the last 150 years. Music coming out of every street corner. You've got the old cars passing by. You've got the Cuban people welcoming you. It's such a hospitable country, you wouldn't believe, and it's so safe. And so just walking around Old Havana is a really wonderful experience itself. And this is one area that I personally, is just a street that I really love.
Yeah, and my parents actually, my father grew up in this section of Havana, and when my parents met in college, they actually lived not too far from this area. So it really is a great, for me, it's nostalgic because I get to learn about where my parents are from, but for many people, it just brings lots of great memories. So, and here's an opportunity so you guys can see the cars. We've been seeing pictures of the cars for a really long time. And now once you're there, you'll get to experience it. You'll get to ride and drive back into 1959 and feel like, you're going to be doing the drag racing or just being in that era. While you won't drag race, but you'll certainly be able to, set yourself up in terms of pictures. So
one of the best photo ops in the whole country. I love that you said that. We always encourage people, if you want to dress island chic, this is our term for it. Ladies can put on a sundress. Yep. Sometimes the gentlemen like to wear the Panama hat, or you have a cigar. And this is one of the best pictures you take from your trip. With one of the old cars, 1950s era, vintage, beautifully restored. You can see. It's also just a great way to see the city. In the back seat of the convertible car, the wind's blowing, you've got a nice breeze, you're seeing all these different landmarks, you're going along the Malecón, which is the waterfront promenade. So another life experience is, the vintage cars.
Yeah. Absolutely. So now we're going to talk a little bit about local culture. So here's obviously, a great picture that's just showing you the heart of the city.
That's right. Yeah. Some of the architecture here, And this area is actually called Parque Central. There's the Opera House at the end. And really, this is the highlight, one of the highlights of Cuba. You know, we look at old Havana, we look at having a convertible car ride, and then connecting with the local culture and the local people. And so, Lulu, you can keep flipping to the next slide here and come back to the culture in a second. But this is Viñales. This is stunning. I mean, these rock formations that you see here are very unique. They do exist in other parts of the world, Southeast Asia, but these are the same formations here in Cuba. And actually, this area used to be underwater millions of years ago, and now it's got this really fertile soil for growing tobacco. If you're interested in learning about Cuban cigars, we got this really cool cigar rolling experience that you do on the farm, visiting with a local family, and then you can also do a hike or a horseback ride through the mogotes, as they're called. These are these mountains that you see here. But just being in Viñales and seeing this landscape is just kind of a mystical feeling to it. It's something like you've never seen before, and it's only about 2.5, 3 hours from Havana. So you have 5 days. I always recommend doing a day trip to Viñales. You need about 5 days in total to get out there, and you do 1 day in Viñales, and then the rest of your time would be in Havana.
Yeah, and the other thing too is that if you guys are cigar aficionados, you certainly can also bring back up to $100 worth of Cuban cigars. So hopefully that rule.
You can actually bring back more than that now. You can bring back more than that now. That the rule was eliminated fairly recently, so there's no Cuba-specific limits any longer on the tobacco or alcohol that you can bring back. But you do still have the normal limits, which I think is up to $800. It's called a duty exemption. It's just the same as if you go to Mexico or any other country, and you can bring that back. And cigars make great gifts. It's one of the best souvenirs to bring back. People love Cuban cigars. So if you know anyone that would appreciate that, and you could bring it back for them, it's a great gift.
Absolutely. Oops, I went too fast. So here's the town where my mom grew up. And so Cienfuegos is great. From what I hear, it's got a number of, it's very similar to New York City in the sense of you've got your avenues and your streets. So, and so it has that easy walking ability, where you have, I think it's 6 by 6 or 12 by 12. I can't remember, my mom telling me. But it has some great pieces of history and so forth that I think everybody would absolutely enjoy. And it's a great day trip.
It is, yeah, right on the water as well. Really cool architecture here in the town square. You can see just beyond the car in the foreground. So we do the day trip there, starting in Havana. You go through Cienfuegos. It's also known as the Pearl of the South. So It is this nice city to see, and it's part of the circuit. You can have a wonderful lunch right on the water, and then head off to Trinidad, which is just a couple hours away from Cienfuegos.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you wanted to spend the night in Cienfuegos, we absolutely can make that happen as well.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the beautiful things about Cuba is having Hemingway's fishing village. Hemingway used to love to come to Cuba all the time. So in Key West, not being so far away, this was something that you would see. He would be able to go from Key West here all the time. And he wrote quite a number of books here.
Mm-hmm. He loved Cuba. Hemingway actually has, first this fishing village called Kohimar actually inspired The Old Man and the Sea.
Yes.
One of Hemingway's most famous books. And where he lived is called Finca Vigía, and it's about 20 minutes from here. And you can actually go and visit Hemingway's house, and it's pretty well preserved to exactly the way it used to look. You can see where he marked his height on the wall. You can see into the home. There's actually a Picasso dish that's hanging on the wall, and you can kind of look into his study, and you can see the different ways that it was set up and styled, and then go out and look onto the grounds. And we've got our local specialist who will tell you all the stories about Hemingway's house and how there used to be celebrities in swimming in the pool and skinny dipping, and there were all these cats and dogs running all over the property. And so we give you that that trip back in time and all those fun little facts that really make it a meaningful part of the experience.
And that alone is an experience like no other. You're not going to find it anywhere else. So we talked about the cigar rolling. Obviously, this is just a picture to show you, what it looks like. But you will have an opportunity in Viñales or if in any other cities to also be able to make your own cigars and roll them and get a lesson.
That's part of the experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So super awesome in that. One of the things that I do love and I miss is obviously the Cuban home cooking. And so here we are actually giving you an opportunity to have a private chef experience. So not only could you have somebody come to where you're staying and cook for you and create these amazing local dishes, but they can also even teach you. So if you wanted to have a cooking class or anything along those lines for you and whoever you're traveling with, you've got those options.
Cooking class is a ton of fun. This experience that we've got highlighted here is actually in the home of a private chef who is just such a character. He's actually the director of art cinema in Cuba, and he refuses to use recipes to cook because he believes they're too formulaic, and so he only will cook from emotion. And he's got a whole performance that he goes through where he talks about the emotion that inspired each dish, how he channeled that to find the right ingredients, the spices, and there's a whole backstory behind that as well because it's Cuba, so you can't just go to the grocery store and pick up exactly what you want to cook with. You got to go out and find it and be resourceful and be innovative. And so what this private chef has been able to do with these flavors is it's spectacular. It really is one of the best meals you can have. It's home cooked, and his house just looks like it's a movie set. It looks like it's straight out of the 1950s. So really cool private experience for the whole family, or if you're traveling just as a couple, it could be a really nice romantic dinner, just the two of you. Salsa lessons. You can't go to Cuba without dancing a little bit of salsa. It's probably the capital of salsa worldwide. I mean, it just on every street corner, you'll hear salsa music. You'll see people dancing. It's part of the way of life. They have the rhythm, the way that people move. And it's just so fun.
That's how my dad grew up. He would just go to different people's houses, or he would just go right outside, and all of a sudden he'd be in another neighborhood, and people would just be like, "Come here, we'll show you how to dance." And my dad is a great dancer. So too bad.
I wish I could say the same. I never learned enough, unfortunately, but I try to fake it sometimes. I should take I should take more salsa lessons. But for anyone that's traveling to Cuba,
I think we all should, right? I think that certainly would make, life amazing. And that, brings us back to obviously the local music, because no matter where you are on any street or on the boardwalk or anything else, you certainly have a lot of the Cuban flavor that people love music that just makes them happy. And it exudes from them. So I think that's an amazing experience that you're going to have, and you're going to be supporting, local people as not only they're sharing with you their music, but anything that you give them certainly goes towards that.
Definitely.
So here's the Gran Teatro, and so we talked, I think, a little bit about it earlier in terms of the location and everything else. But so here's an opportunity for you to be able to see, where they put on any type of events and so forth.
We can arrange tickets to an opera performance, to a ballet performance. You'd be surprised. Cuba has done actually a pretty good job of supporting the arts historically, and so you see that in the ballet performances. And Cuban ballet is one of the most renowned ballets worldwide, and you can get tickets to see a ballet for front row seats, $20-$30 at this amazing theater that was recently restored several years ago, that was built either in the 1800s. I think it was built in the 1800s, but you can see just some of the styling on the inside there. It's stunning. It's absolutely beautiful. We actually like to give a tour of the Gran Teatro.
Yeah.
In addition to going, and if you go and see a ballet, but actually take a tour of it. It's got marble all throughout the inside. It's really nice.
Super awesome. And then, of course, there's nothing better than having a mojito and having some rum tasting.
Another thing Cuba's known for, the birthplace of the mojito. Cuban rum is some of the world's best. So if you do enjoy a drink, this is one of the best places you'll have a mojito and a rum tasting. Just a lot of fun. Cuba, we haven't talked about that enough. It's just such a fun destination. You got the salsa dancing. You've got this amazing 500-year-old city that's so vibrant. You've got the convertible car. We've talked a little bit about local music. Also the nightlife. You can go out and see amazing 12-piece salsa jazz band and just incredible music. So
and there is
really
a place called Tropicana that does have events almost every night, no?
And Tropicana is one of the best ways to witness the music, and it's a cabaret show.
Yes.
So it really is a throwback to the cabaret shows of the 1950s, and it hasn't changed since then, and that's a lot of fun.
Yep, and that's beautiful. And so, just if you want to dine, and have a dining with a view kind of concept, these are private rooftops that they're around the city that we can easily arrange for you. Yes. So that way, again, you're keeping that social distancing, you're not feeling overcrowded, and all of that. And it's just you and those who are traveling with you. So really great opportunities here.
That's right.
So with that, I think that this is, an amazing way just to kind of start the love, right, of Cuba. And if you haven't thought about Cuba as your destination, that you should really be going to, now's the time. Because I'm here to help you in all aspects of it, to making sure, again, from your visas, getting your airfare, getting all of your accommodations and your experiences done. And there's no reason why you can't go and enjoy it. So I'm looking forward to answering all of your questions. And Chad, I want to say thank you so much for joining us and sharing with you your passion about Cuba. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
Lulu, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure to talk about Cuba and hopefully provide some information for those that are watching that this is a really amazing country to visit. It's a very friendly place to visit. It's very safe. We didn't talk too much about safety, but just want to reiterate again, it's one of the safest places you can go. And as Lulu said, now is a great time because the crowds have dissipated. There were actually 800,000 passengers booked on Cuba cruises.
Wow.
And those cruises were canceled about a year ago. So if you had gone at that time, you would have been going around Old Havana with all these huge cruise groups, and those cruise groups are not there right now. So it's a really good time to think about a trip, and we would love to help you in making it happen.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Chad. I really appreciate you taking the time, and we will certainly be in touch because I'm excited to be planning my trip next.
All right.
All right. Until the next time, thank you so much. Namaste, everybody.
Namaste.
Bye.